Hello everyone and welcome back to my DJ journey. Now today I want to focus on this. I want to show you how my MPC changed my DJing forever. You'll have seen on any of my mixes that I do or any of the remixes that I do that I'm always excited when I can incorporate this into the rest of my mixing because it just changes my music. So I want to show you what it is that I'm actually doing and how that impacts the sounds and the overall feel. But before we get started, let's just show you what we're going to be breaking down. Let's go.
Your friend in house. Your friend in house. Your friend in house. Your friend in house. You may not know my name. You may not have ever seen my face before. You may not even know where I come from. But I am your friend. Your friend in house. 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 You may not know my name. You may not have ever seen my face before. You may not even know where I come from. But I am your friend. Your friend in house. 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 You may not know my name. You may not have ever seen my face before. You may not even know where I come from. But I am your friend. Your friend in house. House.
I absolutely love that. And that's such a simple one to do once you get the sounds right. There wasn't actually a lot going on over here. But I said today is the focus on this. We added that extra Roland Clark vocal in there because why not? So the three things that I think this has brought to my DJing is it allows you to change the track entirely. I'm playing a track over here called Lost. I'm going to play that to you in a second. You see how different this is and the energy that we can bring. The other reason I like it is it's my first step into producing, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a second and what I had to learn in order to be able to use this as best I can. I still think there's loads of room for improvement. And then lastly, what I love is it gives you more control over the sounds that the crowd is playing on the fly. So you're moving beyond just what the mixer can do. The mixer is connected to this track, and so I can filter this track, I can echo this track. But if I can add this extra layer on with something else, it means that I can be controlling multiple layers and how these different layers interact with each other at different points during the mix. And that's why I love it. So let's get into it. Okay, the first one, and the first reason I love this and the reason it changed my DJing forever is it just changes the track entirely. Let me show you what that last track sounded like at the drop. It's good, but it could do with more, I feel. Obviously, if you disagree, let me know in the comments. Now, you can buy tracks that have loads of layers, lots of stabs, lots of vocals, lots of things going on. And actually, I tend to avoid those tracks. I look for tracks that are a little boring so I can do more with them because I know I've got this MPC. And that's why when I say it changed my DJing forever, well, it's changed how I look for and how I buy my tracks. If I didn't have this, my tracks in my library would be completely different. If you went through my library and tried to play a set out with a lot of these tracks, I think potentially, and this is maybe a bit of a bad thing to say because someone's made this track and it is good, but I think it could be so much better. And that's nothing against the track, it's just for my style and I like punchy sounds. So thing one, this MPC or any sampler that you can do this with, it changes your DJing because it allows you to buy a different type of track that you can manipulate in a new and different way. That's easy. Next point. Okay, so thing two, having this was my first step into producing. Now, when I first got it, I actually got a bit overexcited. I went and bought FL Studio and I started to actually try to learn to produce, like taking kicks and hi-hats and snares and trying to produce a track from scratch. And I think I'll go back to that at some point in the future, but it takes a lot of time. And really what I love doing is I love being stood behind the decks. And this was that halfway house, this hybrid DJing, this remix DJing that kind of gives you, well, I've got a starter for 10 with this track that you just heard, Lost, or anything else like that. How can I do a little bit more with it and just turn that track completely around? So when I first turned this on, the reason it made me realize that I knew nothing about producing was I just saw a load of new everything that I'd never seen before. You know, on my mixer, most mixers, what have we got? Filter, noise, sweep, dub echo. This has got space. On my Denon, it was pretty similar. But when I turn this on, now let's come down here. For the sound that we just created, let me show you what it sounded like when I bought it from Splice, and then what I did and how I made it different with the effects that just bring it into this dirty, crushy noise that you heard. So let's come down here. Okay, so let me just remind you what this actually sounds like. So it didn't come like that. I had to do some stuff to get to it. So you can see here, I've added these effects. There's actually one more space for an effect that I could use. So I've got distortion overdrive, I've got a 4-band EQ, and I've got a limiter on it. Now, to just show you the expanse of the effects that you can get on here, this is another route into what I was showing you. If I happen to want to add this effect in here, you've got delay reverb effects. A whole ton of those. You've got dynamics. Now I've used limiter on this. I've used noise gate in the past on some of my remixes, and I think that's pretty much it for there. You've got EQ filters. Now I've absolutely used filters before, high pass filters, and hopefully most of us know what those are. But on this one specifically, I used a 4-band EQ, and you can see the before and after in a second when I show you. We've got harmonic effects. I think I've used in the past, I've used Tube Drive, which gives it some more, I don't know what else to do that. I've definitely used distortion. What else have we used on here? I've absolutely used granulator. And distortion overdrive is the one what we're using today. And then modulation effects. I haven't used that today, but one I love using is multi-chorus. So that takes the sound that you've got and it almost adds that and that and that and that again to give it a chorus feel. So it can either sound detuned to the thing that you're doing or a bit more in tune but wider and more of it. But I've used that before. I've definitely used stutter. I absolutely love that. Da, 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 da. And you can change how these effects make a different stutter as you're using them. And I think that's mainly it. Some vocal and some vintage effects, which I rarely use any of these ones down here. So you can use all these effects. Now, let me show you, because I can turn these off. Let's just go back in here. If I make sure I don't delete them and actually just turn them off, here is what the sample sounded like when I got it straight from Splice. Okay. I like that sound, but you can notice straight away how different that was. So the first thing I did, and that's why it's right at the top here, if we just turn on this distortion overdrive, now listen to it. But you can tell if you hear that, although it's starting to get some of that grittiness to it, it was only when I thought, we'll add this 4-band EQ onto it. So we turn that back on. Now listen to it. And it's actually got a bit thicker. And how I did that was I went into here and you can edit any of these effects. So if you go in here, I chose this one called Best Mix. Now just to give you an example, let's choose, that's the initial, on the radio. Now listen to it. So as you can see, just changing some of the presets on there, just for that 4-band EQ, changed the sound again entirely. And then lastly, I put this limiter on. Now I want to try and do a quick on and off. So if we play it now. You can hear that. It gave it even more, didn't it? It just pumped it up that little bit further. And I think that's, it's a bit like a compressor I was learning about. When I first thought about compression, I thought that made the sound quieter, but actually you can make the sound louder. And with this air limiter as well, do you notice how it just gave it that bit more width to it? So I was working on these sounds from Splice. Now I won't say I know what I'm doing every single time. Absolutely not. A lot of the fun that I get from having this MPC is I don't spend all the time on my decks. I'm actually cruising through Splice and I'll be like, yeah, that sounds good, that sounds good, that sounds good. Put it on here, then I start messing about with it. I rarely just go, yeah, brilliant, just use that. I did at first, use a sample as it was, but now, because I know I've got so many effects on here that I can just do more with it and make that sound even more mine so it fits into the track I'm playing, that, yeah, there's just, the world is your oyster when it comes to this. Which moves on to my last point. Thing 3, I love this MPC and it changed me forever because it allows me to do some dynamic stuff to the sounds while DJing. And that is just the pinnacle for me because what you've got on the mixer, it allows you to change the sounds that are associated to the tracks that you're playing. But because we've got our sample, because we put our effects on it, and to be able to change that last little bit, change those frequencies so it's just peaking or it just sounds a little bit clippy, sounds a little bit dirtier than what the effects are allowed to bring. Absolutely, I just love that bit of it. So just come down here and let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's come down here to my 3 Q links. I've got filter cutoff, filter resonance, and filter envelope depth. So the first one's really easy, filter cutoff. As you use this, it's just blocking off those frequencies that make up that sound more and more as you go through it to the point at which it will get cloudy when it gets to about here normally, and it'll cut off more and more frequencies until it almost cuts out everything and you've got almost nothing left. Now, the next one, and this is the one I love, the filter resonance. When you have this one all the way up, this one applies or amplifies the frequencies at the filter cutoff point. You know, when this is about to cut off, wherever that is, it might be here, 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 it amplifies those frequencies. And the way I like to think about it is, you know, when you had an old dial-up modem that would make those noises, that noise as it was doing its work, the higher this is, almost the louder that modem noise is, and at the filter cutoff point when this gets to here. So it'll be really aggressive, maybe a bit acidy. So what I like to do is, because the way I mix, I don't want it to be quite as acidy or techno. So I'll bring it down a little bit. So it's a bit of a quieter modem as well. And then the last one is my filter envelope depth. Now, when I do this, if I have this all the way up, I could be doing anything to this. It's almost like turning the effect of the filter cutoff off. So you can be here, 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 it doesn't make a difference if this is up. But if this is all the way down, you get the full range of this filter cutoff. Now, when I put this up, and this is where the 3 of them start to work their magic, I add this in to probably about here. So as my filter cutoff is coming down, it might not start for a little bit, but then as it's coming down, I want the last part of the range from here to here to here. There'll be like a pinnacle point where it'll just have the right number of cutoff, right amount of cutoff, and the right frequencies without going too low and too cloudy. And it'll be what I'd use as the tune is building up, and then boom, bang it back in. So that all depends on where you have that filter resonance as well. So you have to play around with these 3, but we'll see how they sound in a sec. Okay, let's see what this sounds like. So let's start off with our filter cutoff. Taking some frequencies out, more frequencies out, becoming cloudy, taking even more until there's nothing left. Now let's go on to this resonance. We'll go all the way up here. This is that squelchy sound, and you're going to hear the cutoff point is going to emphasize those frequencies. It's a bit acidy. Oh, dirty. Now let's just take this out. Now, the filter envelope. So the filter envelope, so I've got it all the way down here. I've got all this room with the filter to move. The more I apply this envelope, the longer it takes for this to kick in. Barely even kicked in there. It's just... You see? Just kicking in there. Take it a bit more down. So it's kicking in about there on this one. So actually, I want it probably about there for what I want to do. So it kicks in. Just kicks in about there, doesn't it? And then by the time I add my resonance back on, my resonance is right here. Now, with all three applied, you get a completely different start to that sound. Just add the envelope maybe up to here where I had it originally. Right, I had the resonance maybe about there before. That was perfect. That's perfect, just there. And that gets that sound just about where I wanted it to be. So hopefully you can see there, or you can hear, how the relationship of my filter cutoff, my filter resonance, and my filter envelope depth have on that sound. And that is, oh, well, I absolutely love that, because I mainly have these dialed in, although I could be tweaking these a little bit, because I've got these dialed in to about where I want. Using the filter cutoff then as the build up is coming allows me to manipulate that sound just a little bit, and then when the drop happens, come back in and it just feels like you've got that real dirty sound coming through again. So yeah, I absolutely love this. And there's so much more that I really don't know behind the MPC. I often go, oh my God, it does this. Oh my God, it does that. But it's been a massive impact onto my DJing. And even if you just took that sound and this track, that's so simple to do. Find something on Splice, add a few effects onto it by a little bit of trial and error, then start to melt around with your filter cutoff, resonance and envelope depth. And that allowed me to make this whole remix where all I did was add on that Roland Clark vocal. If we just do it again.
Your friend in house.
And it just brings this whole thing together. So yeah, that's all I wanted to do today. I just wanted to show you a little bit about, well, behind the scenes of what the MPC does. And it took me a while to fall in love with this, I'm not gonna lie. I was umming and ahhing for ages, because back when I bought this, I was on my denim gear and I was looking at the DJS 1000, and I'm so happy I didn't go for that now. My reasons for wanting the DJS were, one, aesthetics, it just looks like another deck. Yeah, I've got a little bit of OCD with that still maybe. I haven't signed that one off quite yet. But two, because it's Pioneer gear, the DJS 1000, it really sits in time with what you're doing. You can sync it, but I've never been one for sync. So I don't really need it. I can mix by ear. So as long as I've got this in the right, if we come back down here, on here, I've got this set to 126 beats per minute. So this is also 126. If I wanted to change this, I'd go in here and just increase the beats per minute per track that I'm doing to whatever I'm matching here, but I tend to play at 126. So I've got this at 126. I can mix by ear if this starts to go out. But then what this gives me over and above the DJS, which what I was thinking about, is far more depth to be able to do more of that producing side. This is closer to being a synthesizer, I think, than the DJS. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a bloody cool piece of kit, but this does far more, and you can actually create longer clips with this as well. So yeah, that's all I want to talk about today. I've absolutely loved my DJing, but this is DJing on steroids. I couldn't recommend something like this anymore if you want to just try and add a little bit more to your setup. So good luck. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.